Well, good afternoon, everyone. I am really glad you all were able to sign on this afternoon. We'll probably have a few more people joining in. I'm Deanna Langman, and I'm with the Montana PTAC, the Procurement Technical Assistance Center. And many of you have worked with PTAC already, so you know who we are and what we do. And I'll talk more a little bit about PTAC later. But just a brief overview, we are a resource for your company. We are specialists in helping businesses with government contracting. We have 6 locations in Montana. We help you with everything from all the basic registrations to finding opportunities to responding to a solicitation, just understanding where your company fits in the spectrum of government contracting, which is vast, especially in the federal world. And so we don't charge for what we do because the Department of Defense funds the PTACs nationwide. So all of have PTACs in Montana. Like I said, we have 6 locations. And so you are already paying for us to help you through your tax dollars. So with that, I want to get right to the program today because we have some excellent information lined up for you from the Forest Service today. I guess before we start, maybe just a couple of housekeeping items. Make sure your mics or your microphones are muted, if you would. And then hold questions until the end, if you could. Maybe type them in the chat, and then I can read the questions when we finish the presentation. And better yet, use the reactions button at the bottom of your screen to raise your hand. And that way, everybody can have a little dialogue. So with that, I'd like to introduce our speakers today. We have Gary Stevens and Dana Vanguard, and they are with the Forest Service. And they tag team in it today, I believe. But just to give you a little background, Gary is a supervisory contract specialist for the U.S. Forest Service, the Intermountain CSA number 3, and he is seated in Bozeman. CSA number 3 is responsible for the procurement of services and supplies for eastern Montana, North Dakota, and a small part of South Dakota. Gary holds a level 3 federal acquisition certification in contracting and has been a procurement official since 2000 and an employee with the U.S. Forest Service since '97. Prior to his position in procurement, he served in recreation and resources, letting people in as we're talking here, management on the Lolo National Forest, and has worked in a contracting capacity on the Lolo, Custer, Kootenai, and Gallatin, now Custer-Gallatin National Forest. Gary also has a long military background, having served in the U.S. Air Force on active duty for 4 years, and continues to serve as a member of the Montana Air National Guard since 1992, and with his current role as a Lieutenant Colonel, Deputy Group Commander of the 120th Maintenance Group, 120th Airlift Wing, and in Great Falls, Montana. And Dana is also a I want to get the term right here, Dana, Federal Acquisition Certification, but you're level 2, is that right? Okay. Yep. She's a contract specialist with the Forest Service, also seated in both CSA number 3, so same area as Gary. And Dana has been a procurement official since 2009 and an employee with the Forest Service since 1999. And prior to her position in procurement, Dana was on a trail crew, fire crews, and administrative support staff. Now, along with her duties as a contract specialist, Dana serves as a procurement unit leader for one of the Northern Rockies Type 1 incident management teams. And so we are very pleased that they are here today. They are experts in this area, and they're here to tell you a lot about opportunities with the Forest Service and how to do business with the Forest Service. And I hope Gary and Dana talk about some of the upcoming opportunities, possibly with the Great American Outdoors Act. I'm sure you will. So with that, thank you for being here, and I'm going to let you take it away. Now, I'm going to share the slides. So do you want me to do the PowerPoint first? Is that where you want to start?
Yeah, that'd be great.
All right. Hang on with me just a minute while I get that up here.
Experts, I think that would be more in Dana's area there, so she corrects me when I'm wrong.
No. We work together.
All right. Almost there. Hang on with me.
So before that comes up, Deanna, I just
Yeah.
want to say thank you for having us and hosting us in this the meeting. Obviously, it's better if we can meet in person, and we've had meet and greets over the years, and it's been wonderful to be able to sit and talk with each person as they come up to the table and talk about what they do and how they can help the Forest Service.
Mhm.
This is the next best thing, and it's great to have as many folks on here as we have, and hope to be able to answer some questions and tell you a little bit about the Forest Service and what we do. So with that, I will a little bit about what we're going to talk about, the Forest Service purpose and mission. You know, there's a lot of people that don't really understand exactly everything that the Forest Service does. So I just want to touch on that a little bit before I get into what we do in contracting. How do we procure goods and services? Going to talk about that. Different types of purchasing vehicles and instruments that we use to go ahead and contract with vendors. Some of the types of goods and services that we typically procure. And then next slide.
Okay.
Then we're going to talk about forecast of opportunities and how that's put out there for vendors to take a look at. What the differences are between opportunities over 25,000 and under 25,000, and what those dollar amounts mean and why those specific dollar amounts. Not sure exactly what all the background is of everybody on here and how much contracting experience they have with the federal government, but those numbers are critical. And then doing business with the Forest Service, how to do that. So,
Next slide.
Yep. So a bit about our Forest Service mission and motto, and these are taken from a document that's put out there. It's called "This Is Who We Are." It's a document for the Forest Service employees, not only for us, but for the general public. You can go out there on the internet and find the document "This Is Who We Are," and it talks about the Forest Service, what our mission is, and just gives you a good overview of what we do and how we do it and all that kind of thing. So the mission to sustain the health and diversity and productivity of nation's forests and grasslands to meet the needs of present and future generations. We've been an agency since 1905, so quite a while. And the Forest Service has brought people and communities together to answer the call of conservation. Obviously, the Forest Service lands, public lands, your lands, get a lot of use. Millions of people use them, so they get beat up pretty bad, and we try to do what we can to take care of them. And in contracting, we are that arm of the agency that helps our program folks get the services and supplies and construction and all the contract needs they have to get that done. So our motto in the Forest Service is to care for the land and serve people, caring for the land and serving people. And pretty quick motto, but it kind of says what we do. So slide. More on the mission, grounded in world-class science and technology and rooted in communities, USDA Forest Service connects people to nature and to each other. As a federal agency in service to American people, the Forest Service cares for shared natural resources in ways that promote lasting economic, ecological, and social vitality. In agency supports nature and sustaining life. So that's all directly from that "This Is Who We Are" document, but it really does say essentially what the Forest Service does and why we're an agency and why we do what we do. So next slide, please.
Okay.
Purposes and values. Again, like I just started to touch on why we do what we do. Our agency was created on the principle of managing the nation's natural resources for the greatest good, for the greatest number, for the longest time. A quote from our first Forest Service chief, Gifford Pinchot. And the agency, Forest Service agency, unlike the Park Service agency, is rooted in conservation versus preservation. And that's the difference too. We often get people often get the two mixed up because obviously national parks have forests, and so they mix the two up. But Forest Service is multiple use, sustained yield, and we're rooted in conservation versus preservation. So everything we do across our broad and diverse agency is intended to help sustain forests and grasslands for present and future generations. because our stewardship work supports nature and in sustaining life. You say grasslands. There's grasslands all across the country, and national grasslands. You know, we talk about North Dakota has our national grasslands in Region 1, and people say, well, why Forest Service in North Dakota? How many trees do they have? You can count them on 2 hands. So we do manage the national grasslands in all of North Dakota. So there's a number of different districts across the state, with our furthest district, the Cheyenne district, being out in almost in Minnesota. So it's quite a big area. So next slide, please. So how does the Forest Service purchase goods and services, different types of purchasing vehicles? You know, first of all, the Forest Service gets a budget allocation from Congress, just like all departments and agencies. The annual budget for the Forest Service is roughly $5 billion. It sounds like a lot of money, but that's just a little drop in the bucket. You guys heard a lot of what's been on the news lately about the numbers they're throwing around. But $5 billion roughly to keep the Forest Service lights on and running year to year. That's allocated out to the various forests, regions and forests and stations and research stations and all the different aspects of the Forest Service. Force account versus contract. We contract for services and supplies and construction and A&E and all those types of things because we don't have the staffing to do everything that we need to do to get the mission of the Forest Service done. So some work we're able to get done by force account, basically our own workforce force account. So and that which we can't get done internally, we contract out for. Micro purchasing, that's a term that for anything less than $2,500 for services, we can purchase without competition, either on a purchase with a purchase card or a convenience check for those warranted officials who have convenience checks. And $10,000 is the supply limit that we can purchase supplies without without competition. We have to obviously purchase things that are fair and reasonable. We have to obtain things at a fair and reasonable price because we understand and know and are always aware that the money we are spending are taxpayer dollars. They're not our funds, they're not our program funds, they are the people's funds. And we have to spend them appropriately and make sure that we get fair and reasonable prices for everything we buy. We purchase things off of GSA schedule. And we post requirements on GSA eBuy. GSA schedule is those are contracts that are awarded by the General Services Administration that we are able to go out and look at what they've already awarded contracts for and just buy what we need if they already have a scheduled contract for it. So if you're interested in obtaining a GSA schedule as a vendor, that might be something you'd be interested in doing, contacting GSA and talking with a GSA contracting officer and see if your business is able to obtain a GSA schedule if you don't already have one. IDIQ contracts already awarded, indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity. These are there's a number of different types of indefinite delivery type contracts that we know that we're going to need a number of services or supplies for a longer period of time, but we don't know exactly how much or how many or what the requirement's going to be for out years. So we can award IDIQ contracts for up to 5 years, statutorily up to 5 years. A base contract year, and then up to 4 additional years. We don't always go up to 5 years, but we can on those. So we have a number of IDIQ contracts already awarded in Region 1, which Region 1 is all of Montana, North Idaho, and North Dakota, and a little bit of Northwest South Dakota, like Deanna was saying earlier. So we have a number of those already in place, and we issue task orders against those, and task orders become a task order contract. So you hear the term no bid contracts, sometimes in the news, or it makes headlines. No bid contracts. They've already been competed. They've already been advertised. People have had an opportunity to compete on those if they were interested at the outset of the IDIQ, and once they are awarded an IDIQ contract, they sometimes we end up pricing out those if they're not priced ahead of time. Pre-priced IDIQ contracts, we'll get prices from contractors who are awarded a parent contract and then obtain pricing and then award to one of those contractors who got an IDIQ contract. Blanket purchase agreements are not a contract. They fall under FAR Part 13, which is Simplified Acquisition Procedures. And blanket purchase agreements are just basically a simple way for us to have an agreement that we're going to have a number of items or supplies that we might need, and we have assigned an agreement with a vendor that somebody that's on the list of being able to use that can go in and pick up some supplies, and then we'll pay the agreement once a month. We don't use these that much anymore. We typically use these for like food purchases for individuals that will go into the back country and they need to buy groceries. There just isn't that much of they're hard to manage, and we don't do that many blanket purchase agreements anymore. But that is one tool. Requests for quote are that level 250,000 is the simplified acquisition threshold, and anything less than that we put out as a request for quotation. In the difference between what a request for quote is aside from or compared to those that are listed below that, a quotation is a vendor we can put a requirement out there on contract opportunities. And if it's less than that, they can provide a quote to us. And if that quote is a fair and reasonable price, we can then, as a government, extend an offer to the vendor on that quotation. Once that quotation that offer is extended by the government, then the contractor can accept that offer and it doesn't become a contract until it's something is signed or the contractor begins progress, and then not only progress but substantial progress. So it takes a little bit more to get into a contract, an actual binding contract with a quotation. The other part about $250,000 is that threshold and anything below it is automatically set aside for small businesses. So we have to do what's called a dissolution of small business set aside in order to put that out for full and open competition if the vendor is a large business. So but we automatically set aside anything less than $250,000 for small businesses. Requests for proposal are FAR Part 15 in negotiated contracting. Those are typically greater than $250,000. So and we'll talk a little bit more about how those are advertised, but that comes under FAR Part 15, and those are negotiated contract. Invitation for bid, or IFB, is often termed sealed bid, and those are awarded on the lowest responsible bidder that happens to provide a response to a sealed bid or an invitation for bid or IFB. That's all one and the same there. The thing we can do is put out a sources sought. If we need information, we're not sure about the vendor pool, what's out there, what kind of information is available. We don't know. We're just basically doing market research. So sometimes we'll post a sources sought. That's not a solicitation. There's no project necessarily in mind. We're just trying to find the information from vendors that are out there looking at contract opportunities. So that's what sources sought is. So next slide, please.
Okay, so so the next two slides, this is just a small list of the things that we purchase as far as the Forest Service. Typically what we buy deals with land management, and then also in order to keep the facilities such as our ranger stations, our supervisors' offices running as well. So as you can see here, we procure road maintenance and repairs, road and bridge construction, and we have a large IDIQ contract for the road and bridge construction, but that doesn't mean we won't go to open market and find a small business to perform. We tend to use the IDIQ for larger projects, but if we have smaller projects, we will typically go out and look for small businesses perform that work. We also use that IDIQ contract a lot when we're hitting towards the end of the year and we need to get the money spent. That's a great tool for us to utilize for the road and bridge construction. We also do campground maintenance, repair, and construction, sign installation, weed spraying, janitorials. Every district has a janitorial contract for the most part. A&E services, and A&E is architect and engineering services. A lot of times our engineers we just don't have the engineering staff to put together the specs. So we will seek out services from private A&E firms to put together our specs for future contract packages. Property boundary services, that's where they do surveys to ensure that no one's encroaching onto Forest Service and that the Forest Service is not encroaching onto public or onto private land. ATVs, UTVs, snowmobiles, motorcycles, that's typically a pretty important one that we do every year. We have a lot of ATVs and UTVs that we're buying, and trailers. Next slide. Some other ones, mine reclamation, the public is allowed to, it's public land, so we do have mine companies come onto the public land to mine. However, at the end, sometimes the Forest Service lands up cleaning up those sites. So we do have quite a few reclamation projects. We have a very large one going on in South Dakota right now. It's called Riley Pass. It's a uranium site that we have funding to reclaim that area. Hazardous fuels reduction, fairly important. Every year we have very large fires, so the Forest Service does what we can to mitigate hazardous fuel around pretty much kind of around the WUI, so the wild urban interface area. As long as we don't get caught up in court. A lot of times that's where we get stuck at, is we get protested or we get sued because we're doing a fuels reduction project, but nonetheless we still do it. Tree planting and thinning, that's very important to come in and restore an area after a logging operation or even after a fire. Road brushing, lawn maintenance, SST, the sweet smelling toilets, those are the vault toilets that you see out in the campgrounds. And Gary will go into this a little bit more, but we do have a large amount of money coming in for infrastructure for the Forest Service, and also the Park Service received money as well under the Great American Outdoors Act. Range supplies, we have a lot of areas out, especially in eastern Montana, where we put up fencing. We buy a lot of fencing products if we can do it by force account, we'll buy the supplies. If not, we will enter into a contract to do the fencing. Explosives, again, we have individuals that are certified to use explosives, whether it's to blow up trees, take out rocks on a road, or also to put in line during a fire assignment. Dust abatement, snow removal, and then we also have recreation supplies and office supplies to keep our offices going. And like I said, this is not everything that we do. Some other things that I can think of is, one big thing is the toilet pumping. We need all those vault toilets need to be pumped out on the forest. It's difficult to find vendors that can actually want to do that, because unfortunately the public likes to abuse them and use them as trash collection sites rather than just using them for toilets. So again, this is just a small list of the things that we do. If you go to the next slide. Every year, the Forest Service is asked, along with other USDA agencies, which are listed in the bottom of this slide, to go to their advanced acquisition plan and put in known projects that are coming up in the future. And this allows small businesses to see what we have planned. It's not everything, and sometimes we find that if a project goes over a couple of years, the Forest Service or other agencies will put that project back in. It might be awarded, but again, we're there to answer those questions if you have questions about any future projects that are going to come up. But this link will take you to the site of where our future planned projects are going to be.
Ready for the next one?
Yeah.
Okay, so As was mentioned a couple times already, is the Great American Outdoors Act, the forecast of opportunities. We've got a bunch of projects coming in. During the previous administration, the GAO, Great American Outdoors Act, was passed. The Forest Service got a very small piece of that. I mean, it sounds like a lot of money, but it's the much smaller piece that the Fish and Wildlife Service got a big chunk, and so did the National Park Service. But it provides $285 million a year per year for the next 5 years to improve infrastructure and deferred maintenance on roads, bridges, and campgrounds, and recreation supplies, and picnic tables, and fire rings, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So over the next 5 years, you'll start to see opportunities and improvements on all those areas on national forest lands that get used and abused. So there's that. I'll be looking for opportunities out on contract opportunities, Beta SAM, that say GAOA, and those are those opportunities. We also passed, I think it was in the previous administration, Land and Water Conservation Fund, which provides $900 million per year permanently for departments of agriculture and interior. So obviously a lot of opportunities coming in that way to get the things we need to do our mission. And then of course every year the federal government spends about $3 billion a year on preventing wildfires or wildfire suppression. And Dana's going to talk a little quickly about this. We've got a vendor handout that Deanna's going to post or put up on the screen that talks about some of the vendor opportunities that we have in fire.
You want me to put that up now?
Yeah, that'd be great.
All right.
Great, thanks, Deanna.
Just take me a second here. All right, how's that look?
Oh, good.
Can you read that though? Is it pretty small?
It'll be okay. I'll go over it, Deanna.
Okay.
So this letter came out and it'll be posted for you to access if you're interested in providing support to wildland fires. You'll see the first block of bulleted items. Those items are competed and put onto incident blanket purchase agreements. Many years ago, we used to just line up all the equipment, run them through every year. Once there'd be like a day where all the equipment would show up, we would enter into a price for that piece of equipment. We'd do an inspection and we would do an emergency equipment rental agreement. Well, the GAO found that we needed to be competing as much as possible on this stuff. So the Forest Service came up with this what's called Viper contracts. And these Viper contracts are, I believe they're 3-year. Yes, they're on a 3-year basis. So it's a base plus 2 option years. These are blanket purchase agreements. This is typically where we use our blanket purchase agreements mostly, is for these incidents. And these are competed. So there was some equipment that had just been competed that our solicitations closed at the end of March. There are some still open till, I believe, mid next week, but those are in different regions such as California, Arizona, and New Mexico. So everything up here is now closed. And then those contracting officers will go through the pricing, check performance, and then put them on dispatch priority lists. So each dispatch center will have these Viper contracts ready to go, and as incidents pop up, they can order up this equipment off of the Viper contracts. Now, if we either exhaust, we have to go to the Viper contracts first. If we exhaust those Viper contracts, then we can sign up equipment that was not on these lists under emergency equipment rental agreements. But you can see in the second block, these are things that we are definitely looking for. Every year we are, hauling logs out that we cut down and try to, while we're putting in big line, very big lines to keep the fire from going out further. Self-loading logging trucks, portable toilets and hand wash stations. We used to work in conjunction with the state of Montana to set up agreements. We no longer honor those agreements set up by the state of Montana. Vehicle with drivers are very important. Refrigeration trailers are also important to support the camps. Fuel trucks, type 3 caterers, and tents. So those are all going to be on emergency equipment rental agreements. And again, you'll be contacted if you're interested. A contracting officer or a purchasing agent will contact you and begin negotiations. Now, if you go, some of this equipment, if you're a heavy equipment operator, you will have to do the walk test, and that is to ensure that you are fit to be on the line to perform duties. And you will also have to take the standard refresher every year, the RT-130. And there are programs out there that provide this. So the government used to provide it to all parties, but then businesses started popping up that could provide the training and then do the test, the walk test, or the pack test as well. And so the government stepped away and did not want to be in competition with those companies. So if you go down to the third page, Deanna, this page here will tell you all the dispatch centers in Region 1. And what you want to do is if you have something that's not on a Viper contract, you need to notify the dispatch center of the equipment that you are interested in possibly providing come fire season. So, Billings, Miles City, Bitterroot, Bozeman. So again, this is all the dispatch centers within the Northern Rockies.
I'll make sure that everyone gets a copy of this. I'll email out the PowerPoint and this.
Okay. And if you have any questions, I believe we'll have our contact information too, Deanna.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, it's on the PowerPoint, right? Should I go back to that?
No, that's okay. If at the end, if you have questions regarding fire, you can feel free to call me anytime and we can talk about it more in depth.
Yep.
Same with the PowerPoint on this, Deanna. You can provide the PowerPoint. It's got some links in there that are helpful for the vendors too as well.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can get back to our show here. Hang on. So I think they've got a couple slides left, so hang on. Get back where we were here.
I think we're on slide 12.
12. How's that look?
Yeah, I think.
Yep, that's good.
That's fine. Yep.
Perfect.
Okay, so this slide is to point you in the direction of where we post our opportunities. So as Gary mentioned, if we cannot find it on GSA, which is where we're supposed to go first, this is where we then post our solicitations to find a business to perform the work. So anything between 15 to 25,000 will get posted to the Helena, Lewis and Clark. They've been gracious enough to host our website. We don't know how much longer we will have this, but we have it until we are no longer able to access it. And once we are no longer able to access this website, we will begin posting everything from 15 to above 25,000 to Beta SAM. But nonetheless, we still have this website for now. Beta SAM, it used to be Federal Business Opportunities or FedBizOps. And within Beta SAM, so Beta SAM is essentially everything that has to do with government contracting. So like your SAM registration, our FPDS reporting that goes to Congress of how much money we're spending, and wage determinations, and also our postings, FedBizOps, has all been encompassed into this one website, this Beta SAM. So contracting opportunities, you'll want to look for that. It's about midway on the site, and I think it's right above the wage determinations. And this is where anything that has a government estimate of greater than 25,000 will be posted. And this is, you'll see all federal agencies posting to this site. And also, if we have something that we know we may not have much interest, I do send it to the PTAC centers to let them know that I have a posting, because they're a great resource to know of vendors that might be able to perform this service or provide a supply, and they will send the link out to them as well. There are keyword searches. And so if you are looking for something in particular, or if you're looking for something Forest Service wise, you can do a keyword search and the projects should pop up in that, from that keyword search. Next slide.
Okay.
So this is what you as a vendor need to do business with the Forest Service. The most important thing is to be registered in the System for Award Management, also known as SAM. Eventually SAM will be linked up to Beta SAM, but for now we have two sites, Beta SAM and then sam.gov. And you will need to have, I think for now it's DUNS number, but we are moving towards a new numbering scheme. I don't know how much, when that will take place. I think there was a 6-month grace period. Is that right, Deanna? If I just saw.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
looking like next spring is
referred to as a unique identifier, I believe.
Yeah.
Unique entity identifiers.
So there will be some upcoming changes, so just be patient. But your biggest resource in trying to get a DUNS number and get registered in SAM is with your procurement technical assistance centers. And I point all vendors who are not registered in SAM, I point them straight to that. It's don't do it alone. They're there to help. They're funded to help. There are companies out there that will say they're there to help, but they then charge you $600. So you need to be very aware, because their websites look just a little too similar to the PTAC center ones. So when in doubt, either call your local PTAC center or call one of your contracting officers if you have a good relationship with them, or a purchasing agent, and then we can tell you, yes, that's a legitimate website, or no, go to the PTAC center and we can send you the link to that. So this is just the information on how to get registered in SAM. But again, don't do it alone. It's not, people think it's an easy website, and then they get into it and they realize they've buried themselves. And if you don't put in your name correctly, it gets tied up with the IRS, and then it causes all sorts of problems. So, you know, you could have your registration tied up for quite a few days, weeks, maybe even a month, if you can't get it straightened out with the IRS. So they're there to help.
Yeah, we make sure it's set up properly from the beginning, and there's a lot of things on the front end that we check to make sure that we get the legal name exactly correct, even including the punctuation. And you know, you can imagine SAM being a federal system, it's linked, interfaced with all these other federal systems. So if SAM is the origin of everything federal contracting, and if it's incorrect in SAM, it causes a ripple effect throughout the whole system. So it's worth spending some time with us on this. Are you ready for the next one, Dana?
Yeah.
Well, this one's me. I just wanted to provide some points of contact for the Region 1 Procurement Property Services. Recently, the Forest Service has gone through a massive reorganization, and so we are now broken down into 4 zones across the country: East Zone, Intermountain Zone, Southwest Zone, and the Northwest Zone. We are in the Intermountain Zone, which I'm not even sure if I can list all the states that are in the Intermountain Zone, but all of Region 1, all of Region 2, and all of Region 4 of the Forest Service are now the Intermountain Zone. Within that zone, there are 9 contract service areas. And in Region 1, there are 4 of those, CSA 1, 2, 3, and number 9. Number 9's kind of out there at the end because it's a construction and A&E group. They've separated out the construction and A&E folks from the rest of the contract service areas, who are primarily doing service and supply purchasing. That doesn't mean that we all exclusively do service and supplies or exclusively do construction and A&E. There's some mix of both in each still. We are in contracts, Dana and I are in contract service area number 3, which covers Eastern Montana, North Dakota, and South Dakota. But each of these listed here are the CSA leads across Region 1. And they are the main points of contact who can drill down to find contracting officers, purchasing agents, not only across Region 1, but across that Intermountain Zone to include those other CSAs. There's in our zone, there's approximately 70 plus procurement staff. So you've heard the term acquisition management in the past. We've abandoned that term. It was the abbreviation for that was AQM. Nobody understood what Q stood, what the letter Q stood for. It didn't stand for anything. So we changed the title to Procurement and Property Services to encompass exactly what it is: procurement and property. So grants and agreements is another aspect of what used to be in acquisition management. It is now tied separately to each region, and some of you might have worked with grants and agreements folks. That's a totally different aspect of acquisition, but we do agreements with other entities, typically public entities, and that's done through G&A. So these are some points of contact for you: email addresses and phone numbers for Region 1.
Great.
So, and with that, I think the next slide is just open it up for questions.
Well, that sounds great. Yeah, I'm going to stop sharing my screen in a second here and see who's raising their hand and who wants to ask a question, or if we have a chat. But just a little more about PTAC before we do that. Go to montanaptac.org and you can find the center in Montana that serves your area in Montana. But you know, Dana and Gary gave some great information today. They mentioned a few things. We certainly help with SAM. We also do extensive work with our wildfire contractors in Montana, in Viper and the EERA agreements. We can help with the GSA schedule. Beta.sam.gov is where you find the federal opportunities, over 25,000. We know how to navigate that site and show you how to set up safe searches that with criteria that matches your company's capabilities, so that you get email notices every day. And then we also offer our own bid match services. But PTACs are really, we're dedicated to government contracting. That's all we do, is help companies all day. And so no matter where you're at in the spectrum, whether you're starting out and you know you need to start with some of the basics, or even if you're an experienced contractor, there's some value that PTAC can add and help your company, you know, do better with its government contracting goals. So montanaptac.org. Now let me see if we have questions in the chat, and we do have one. We've got Mike. Yeah, the slide deck will definitely be available. I'll email that, as well as that worksheet that Dana went over on the wildfire contracting and the Viper contracts and whatnot. Why don't, I think it's, if you just want to raise your hand, unmute your mic, and if you feel like having your camera on, that would be great too. If you've got some questions for Dina and Gary right now, now's the time.
I think I see one, Dave Gates.
Okay, maybe I don't have it.
I was gonna say maybe we did too good a job.
Yeah.
I see a hand raised at Dave Gates. I don't know if that was accidental or.
Yeah, I don't see that, but Dave, if you do have your hand raised, unmute your mic and ask a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't raise my hand. I must have tapped the screen.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Really good presentation. Thank you for the information.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Hi, can I ask a question, please, then?
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
So I'm Anna Kasmarowski with A2C Staffing Solutions and Adroit Employment Resources in Bozeman. And what we provide is the staffing on temporary basis and permanent basis. We have participated in several federal government contracts in placement contract labor as a primary and diversity supplier tier 2. We are a 100% women-owned company located in Montana, and primary market that we staff in is Montana, but we do have capability to place nationwide. what would be the best way for us to be more visible to the U.S. Forest Service? And which vehicle or which schedule do you use through the GSA schedule? We are actually in a process of being considered for the human capital and office management contracts.
So I think you're heading in the right direction on the GSA. I don't know the exact number. Unfortunately, I don't know a lot of the schedule numbers until I start doing research on what best fits what I'm looking for. But I think where you're heading is appropriate for that. When it comes to doing temporary staffing as in the Forest Service, we need to ensure that we're not infringing on the hiring process. Now we can do, you know, temporary type, but if there's somebody out there that can do the work as an employee, we have to get clearance from our HR department before we look at contracting those services out. So a lot of times we may, if it's like 120 day, we do what is called details or temporary promotions, and they may try to pull somebody from, you know, another agent, you know, another district or whatever, to give them opportunity. So we do have those, but I would say we definitely would go to GSA first before going open market on something like that.
Yeah, it's just a much easier process to go through GSA. But like Dana was saying, we do have an internal process where we have to, actually it's it's in Title 5 of the Code of Federal Regulations, that we have to go through our HR department to make sure that they've signed off and approved us to procure temporary services for a specific position. So
Okay.
once we've got that approval, then we can go out and typically it's going into GSA schedule and typing the word staffing.
Okay. Sounds good. Well, thank you very much.
Thanks, Anna. I've got another question in the chat here, and this is from Titus. We have a new company that does metal welding and fabrication located in Billings. I'm trying to see where we can fit in and provide our services. We have experience in building anything from scratch to fixing damaged metal on heavy equipment, trucks, etc. So probably we need to get you set up first if you're not already, but
Right.
Gary and Dana.
I can think of, you know, especially during fire, I mean, a number of things to get broken, stuff out of districts that we need you know, welding services or shop truck type services, you know, quite frequently. So, I mean, you know, your services, Titus, would be, I think, well received.
Well, and it's good to know that you're out there. So if we do have companies, you know, that are not familiar with the Billings area, we do have heavy equipment that may be looking for a welder to come out into the fire camp. And I have had to do once in a while an EERA with a company to provide welding services, especially if we've got a lot of big iron sitting out on the camp. So, you know, it's definitely a service that we have had to use in the past.
For the Forest Service around the Billings area, we were out there at the BLM office. We've got the Custer Gallatin supervisor's office. Kind of, I guess it's an annex now, right, Dana?
Yeah, it's it's annex
sort of
work center.
Yeah, same building as the BLM office, and then we also have the Beartooth Ranger District down in Red Lodge.
And Ashland.
Oh, in Ashland.
Mm-hmm. Great.
And we do have difficulty getting vendors out to the Sioux Ranger District, you know, out that direction in the southeast portion of the state. And if we have vendors that are willing to go out that far, that really is really a big help to us.
You have a follow-up question, Titus? Well, contact PTAC if you haven't already, and we'll get you.
Titus, can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear.
Yeah.
Yep.
So is there, you have any like contact numbers and people I can reach out to let them know that we are available? I just recently got my SAMS registration confirmed last week. So yeah, so now I'm trying to find where we can fit in basically.
Thanks, Titus. Yeah, on that slideshow that Deanna's going to provide everybody my email address and phone numbers on there, and I can get your capability statement or your information out to everybody in region 1 for sure, and then additional contacts that can get your information out even further in regions 2 and 4 if you'd like.
And then I think the contracting officer at the BLM there in Billings is Brittany Linford. I don't know her name, or I don't know her number right offhand, but you can call the front desk and ask for Brittany Linford. She's the head contracting officer for the BLM.
I've got her number too.
There's a BLM office in Miles City as well.
Yeah.
That's Rebecca Unlin.
Yeah.
Rebecca Unlin. Yep.
So Titus, if you don't have a capability statement, you don't know what that is, contact us here at the PTAC and we'll help you with it. All companies that want to do federal contracting should have one. That's a standard.
That's
expectation.
really handy tool for us to have a quick page or two on everything that the vendor does and all their critical information. It's really helpful.
There's a
Yeah,
certain format though.
I'm just buttoning up a few items on it, and I can get that out to you guys. I'm still trying to figure out exactly what numbers, you know, I need to be using. Still trying to figure those out. I mean, I've got some, you know, I've got some numbers on there for like the general, well, specialty trade contractor, and I got that number on there. But, you know, metal building erection, that sort of stuff. But hopefully I've got the right numbers on there.
We can help you with that. So give us a ring. I've got,
And also,
go ahead, Dana. I've got some more questions coming in.
well, and then another thing to think about, Titus, is to be looking at SAM registration or the contracting opportunities, and you can put yourself out there as a possible subcontractor on. So you wouldn't be the prime on it, but you would also be a contact that you provide those services on like very large projects, like maybe with the DoD or something like that, where they've got a big installation and need a subcontractor for welding. That would be another way of getting your name out there.
That's a good idea. Thank you.
All right, I've got a couple more questions coming in, and this is from S&K Engineering. They're out of S&K Engineering and Research out of Missoula. Does the Forest Service use 8A direct award? Is it a preferred method of contracting?
Do they use 8A what?
Direct award, I think, is sole source 8A.
Yeah.
Yes, we do.
So I'll send out the PowerPoint, Gary and Dana. Their contact information is there, and that would be the next step, perhaps.
Yeah, and to further answer that, the 8A, I mean, a lot of what we end up doing 8A direct awards for is tree planting. We do some of that in awarding IDIQ contracts for tree planting, but there are a lot of different types of things we can go 8A, and we do have a statutory requirement to meet those goals for 8A, hub zone, small business, etc. women-owned.
All right, this one is from Alan with Net Duty, and the question is, our company does online scheduling for public safety departments around the U.S. and military. This is a slightly different type of procurement as you have listed. Who could I contact for more information to learn of potential needs? So online scheduling for public safety departments around the U.S. and the military.
I kind of missed that last part, Deanna. Online what?
Yep, online. So their company does online scheduling for public safety departments around the U.S. and for the military. And then he goes on to say this is slightly different type of procurement than what you've talked about today, but right. Where do you suggest he looks for those kinds of opportunities? We can help you do market research on that, Alan, just FYI, but go ahead, Gary.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, linking with your PTAC center and getting the capability statement out there. And, you know, if we get, you know, thousands of requisitions in every year. They're starting to flow in pretty fast and furious now to us at this time of year. And we never know what some kind of requirement is going to come up at us at a left field. You know, and sometimes we end up procuring things that we've never procured in the past outside of those things that Dana listed. But yeah, get your capability statement out there. We can press it out. We've got safety officers on each forest. And if there's something that is in your capability statement that would meet their needs that they are not able to get done internally, then yeah, it might be a good fit.
Thank you. And we've got another question here from Barney Binkelman. And he's asked, can you briefly explain the process the Forest Service would follow to select a specific quote to offer on if you had a number of responses to a given RFQ on beta.sam.gov, for example? So I guess evaluation criteria, I think, is what he's really asking. How do you decide?
Okay. You want to take that one, Dana?
Well, typically for a request for quotation, it's based on price, experience, and past performance. And usually past performance and experience will weight just a little bit more than price. However, if we have all candidates have the good past performance, have the experience to do it, then it'll fall back to price. And that's what just those things we ask for an experience questionnaire or a resume if you don't want to fill out the experience questionnaire, but we do take our time, especially if it's a company that we're not familiar with, or someone that, if we have companies that we've worked with in the past that we know that can do the work, typically we don't really dig a lot. But if it's a newer company, never really worked with them, we do call and see how their past performance was and the experience. And those are listed in the evaluation criteria. But I will tell you, with an RFQ, it's not nearly as stringent as, say, when you look at an IFB or you look at a request for proposal. We just look at past performance, experience, and then the price.
Great, thank you.
And that information is not public. So I get a lot of calls after an award. I make an offer to the awardee. But what I have done on the past is I say I've received X amount of quotes. The prices ranged from this to the low to the high, and your quote fell this number in line. But it's not public information like an invitation for bid is, where that's all out in the public.
And often you hear the term in government contracting, low bid or low awarded to the low bid, and there's a specific kind of contracting that we do award to the lowest bid, and that's a sealed bid, IFB, invitation for bid, and those are above $250,000. And it's not just to the low bid; it has to be the lowest responsible bidder. They have to be determined responsible, and they have to be responsive to everything in the solicitation, or they can be thrown out. So it's not. And then with request for quote type contracting, we can award on a best value. If there's a contractor that submits a price that is unreasonably low, we have to do our due diligence to not award if something is unreasonably low. I mean, that we don't want to go into contract with a vendor where we know that it will eat their lunch, and they cannot perform the contract for a price that's so low. But they missed something. All the other vendors that submitted prices are all in a target price range of one grouping near the government estimate range, and then one contractor's out in left field at a really low price. It would not be in our best interest to award the contract. And we have to make a determination on that sometimes.
And typically when I see that, I go back to that contractor and say, I'm looking at it. It seems very very low. Are you sure you can do it for this price? And a lot of times those contractors will go back and go, oh man, I totally, I mispriced something or whatever. And I mean, I can't let them change it because that's not fair to the other vendors. But at least we had that conversation before I locked them into a contract. And then they either default or go out of business because they lost money on this project.
And the number of times we've gotten, thank you so much for pointing that out, because if you'd awarded us a contract, it would have been a bad situation. Yeah. So, we don't have to award the low. We can make what's called a best value determination. And like I said, we have to award on best value. If we're going to award on best value, the vendor has to be able to meet our terms in terms of cost, quality, and timeliness. To award that. So it's not always just no bid.
That's great. Does anyone else have questions? Don't be shy. Unmute and go ahead and ask or type it in the chat. Well, and I think after today, you'll probably think of some questions, and that's okay. Be sure to shoot them over to Gary and Dana directly, or give us a ring at the PTAC, and we can help connect and answer your questions as well. Dana and Gary, do you have anything else? Any closing remarks or thoughts?
I just want to thank everybody for taking the time out of their day to log on here. Looks like we had, I think the highest number I saw was 46, and just really appreciate everybody taking the time out of the day to log in and listen. And hopefully we can get back to some of the meet and greets. We can sit down and talk at a table. Kind of missed that. So
yeah. Yeah, we're working on, well, matchmaking. That's still probably a bit in the future, but this is what we have for now. But yes, thank you all for logging on, and again, reach out and ask questions. And remember, these contracts are business opportunities, and we are here for PTAC to help you understand where your company can realize these opportunities and help you get ready and learn how. And that's really the idea here.
And thank you, Deanna, for hosting this. Obviously, it's great to get new contractors into the mix. It helps us with our pricing. It helps validate pricing. Even if you're not a successful awardee on a contract and you put in a price, it helps us quite a bit. So we really appreciate you being here and take a look at the opportunities we are going to be putting out there and throw in a number.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And I will follow up with the PowerPoint and the other worksheet that Dana showed. And I'm also going to send out an electronic survey, if you would all be so kind as to give us some feedback. We use that feedback to try to bring new offerings or make the process better or clearer or whatever. So we really appreciate just taking a few minutes to fill out that survey for us at the PTAC. So if no one else has any questions, this is our last chance. I think we'll say good afternoon and happy Easter and
happy Easter. Have a great weekend.
Yes. All right.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.